All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Waiting for the break of day, searching for something to say, flashing lights against the sky, giving up, I close my eyes.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Our final segment of tonight's show. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And for the all the information about the programming on the X Zone TV channel, exclusively on SimulTV, visit www.simultv.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Tito Abao, and Tito has over 50 years of experience in spiritual work and is the author of the Monograph of the Parallel Life of Tito Abao and Nero. In the early 60s, Tito became an initiative in a Christian yoga church under one of the first American realized beings. And after several years in the order, he went on to become an architectural draftsman until resuming his quest for spiritual liberation after a near-death experience in 2007. Joining me now is Tito Abao. And Tito, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us about your quest, your spiritual quest.
Well, it kind of begins in earnest. I was in a yoga order, and there was a lot of meditation and stuff like that. But I never really had a real breakthrough in that particular type of work. So a few years later, when I got out of that particular discipline, and I found biofeedback. And I was just casually going through the routines. I don't want to go too much into it because it's a little lengthy thing. But what happens is you get into a deeper state. There's about 4 different states that you get into. And one day, my hand shot out and I said, "Hail Caesar." And my therapist was Jewish, and she thought I said, "Heil Hitler."
Oh, my gosh.
And that shook her up a little bit.
I imagine it would, yeah.
I said, "Hail Caesar."
Mm-hmm.
And I just, matter of factly said, I was Nero. And that's where it all started, because it took a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was not something you just fall into.
Right.
Because, I understand the mechanics of it now, but I had to work my way through all these various belief systems that were functioning to keep me locked into this reality. And now I'm going to give you what I'm hoping your audience realizes is my personal experience.
Of course.
And so I'm going to talk openly and exactly the way I found it to be. And eventually, and this is not overnight, I discovered or awakened to the idea that this human body with a mind and a spirit is a holographic projection. And what you're doing is running these timelines. My book, the Monograph of the Parallel Life of Tito Abao and Nero, is only one aspect of that timeline, which goes all the way back 7,000 years. And all the people I was dealing with, particularly the mother in this lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
was all of this stuff started 7,000 years ago when we had all these interactions, which were, you know, it had to do with harm, it had to do with wars, it had to do with greed and that sort of thing. But it came down through time till I got to this one place. And the important thing that I think your audience might get is that this life in that book that I wrote is about a between life agreement, because my mother, Agrippina, was a real ambitious woman who at one point got into a cabal against me. And as at the time I was the emperor, so I had the right to destroy these various cabals that were going to try to overthrow me. And so I had my soldiers execute her. Well, in the between life spaces, and when I came, the whole process is cause and effect. In other words, what I discovered was there's no beginning and there's no end. And all of these karmic cause and effect relationships descend through time and space. They never end. But what happens is you get into these storylines, and the storylines have a beginning and an end. And they're in blocks. And what happens is like in this particular case, the between life agreement between my mother in Rome at the time and my mother now was that to make amends for that attack, I was going to take care of her in her last years because she had a deathly fear of the what you would call the dehumanization of being in a home, because no matter how much money you spend, you really don't know what the quality of care is going to be. And when you're in those places, you're among strangers, and you don't really know how they're going to treat you. And as the son who was taking care of her, and I came there, I would not necessarily know. And as time went by, she became in a position where she had no idea of what was going on around her. But that was the between life agreement that I established between her because of that execution order that I gave in 68 AD.
All right, let me ask you. Let me just pause you here for a moment. You talk about a between life agreement. What is that?
Okay, when you decide to return into the physical plane, you, since I was running this timeline, this 7,000-year timeline, I had to decide what the karmic relationships that I had were going to be repaired. And this was an important one because of this execution factor. And so my agreement with her was she was going to come into this lifetime and she was going to get old and she was not going to be able to take care of herself. And she had this high regard for her dignity. So that was my agreement. I was going to make sure that she went through to the end of her life so that she would never have to deal with humiliation and all the stuff that happens to old people. Because as you probably know, there's a tremendous amount of stories. And I'm telling you, no matter how much you pay, the
care isn't there.
Mistreatment is always going to be a factor.
Well, I think if anything, COVID brought a lot of these stories to the surface. And,
right.
And
yeah,
you know,
right.
it's good to see that the people that we have put in homes or who are in homes are finally going to start getting the care that they deserve, you know, because of the investigations that the governments on many levels are conducting. Now, how do you know that this is a holographic experience that we're...
Well, as I said, this is not something that that I awakened to overnight.
Right.
It took most of my life to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But when you, as I said, I had a near-death experience where I was leaving my body,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that I was going to die, that I was dying, and I was leaving, and I was very conscious of it. And then what happened is this voice said, "Please don't die." And the next thing that happened was that I came back into my body, but I'm not trying to tell you that I understood all this in the moment. These are things that I remembered as, but in the moment that this happens, it's just something that just happens, because I don't actually remember saying okay to the request. So I have to say that I just got back into my body and I was alive the next day.
All right, listen, I've got to take a commercial break here. We're going to be back on the other side. Interesting story. Looking forward to hearing more. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to, get a hold of Tito's book, it's available on Amazon.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast studios and corporate offices in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. Once again, to all our Canadian listeners and Canadians around the world, happy Thanksgiving. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. I'll be back.
The sky, giving up, I close my eyes. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, 25 or 6 to 4.
If I could turn back time, if I could find a way, I'd take back those words that have hurt you, and you'd stay. I don't know why I did the things I did. I don't know why I said the things I said.
Exo Nation, Tito Abao is our special guest this hour. And before we went to the break, Tito, we were talking about your near-death experience, because I asked
Right.
you, how do you know that this is a holographic experience that we seem to believe is real?
Okay, now this story has a lot of elements to it, because when I had the near-death experience,
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time I really, even when I was in the yoga thing, I never really experienced a separation of myself into two pieces. But when I had the near-death experience, I felt, and I knew, it's hard to explain it, because what's happening is you become the energy that flows out of the body. And at that moment, I could tell this body is a machine, and it's projecting things, and it's projecting the universe that you're looking at. But you are an inner spirit. Now, I'm trying to shorten this so that it doesn't get involved, because the next step was that I was guided to the library, and I picked up a book about the Monroe Institute in Faber, Virginia. And I went there, and that's when I had real astral experiences. And then I knew that there was an astral plane. So I understood when I died that there was a physical body and there was a physical plane. And then I knew that I was not the body. I was an energetic form. But I didn't get the full implications of it until, and remember, this is kind of something that I just went to the library,
Right.
found this book, and it turns out that it was, it's kind of like a miraculous thing type thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, it's hard to talk about it on a short, but it, just have to accept my word for it that I found that book and I was guided to that Monroe Institute thing, and that's when I started having these out-of-body experiences. And then I knew that there was an astral plane. There was actually a plane, another field of consciousness. And then I began to go through these various things with that. But I also discovered that there was a center. I mean, not only was there a form, an energetic form, but this idea that I'm thinking, or that I had an experience that I could have kind of like intellectual relationship with it and have understand what the forms are all about.
Yeah.
This is formless. And this is the inner spirit, the actual center core of everything. And that's when I kind of, I'm just saying, I'm jumping ahead because it just kind of gradually got, but the other people that have seen this, like for example, Ambrose Bierce or Mark Twain, they always had this, if you know their work, they're always looking at the earth and the relationship between all these as some kind of a weird joke. And that's kind of what it turns out to be, because these timelines are timelines that you accept to have a physical experience.
All right.
And that's the best I can do. I mean, I can't really, this is something you have to kind of experience because I cannot prove it to you.
Okay, let me ask you something.
It happens to you or it doesn't happen to you.
All right. Now, what is your profession?
Well, I was a architectural draftsman for most of my life.
Okay, why I was asking that, because you're talking about lines and planes. And to me, this is something that a draftsman or an architect would talk about. So I'm just wondering if you're relating what you experienced in terms that you're familiar with.
I see where you're going with this,
Yeah.
but the important thing I have to make sure people understand that I didn't actually know any of this until I was at the Monroe Institute going through those programs and having those bona fide conscious out-of-body experiences.
How can you have a conscious out-of-body experience?
Well, the way the system works, without going into too much detail, is that it's a kind of like a light hypnotic thing that you lay inside a cubicle. And that cubicle, when you go there, it's like being in an institution. But at nighttime or during the training, you go and lay down in one of these little cubicles. And the way it's set up, for I guess economic reasons, that's the place where you live. You sleep there, and you that's your life. But for the running of the programs, you lay in this thing, and then the Monroe Institute has all these tapes that they generate to give you the ability to leave your body.
So
to form yourself into an astral form.
So is this something like subliminal suggestion?
I'd hate to say that, but I mean, people have to relate to something.
Yeah.
And there is a kind of a hypnotic aspect to it. But you do experience an actual separation. Well, I already experienced the separation when I had my near-death experience. But this is a little bit more. What they do is project you into the astral plane. And then you have experiences in the astral plane.
Well, isn't it you who projects yourself to the astral plane?
Well, look, I'm just telling you the way I experienced it, and that's. I mean, everybody comes out with their own way of understanding it, but that's what happened to me. And then I knew that there was actually an astral plane out there.
How long were you?
I mean, you experience it. I'm trying to tell you that I cannot intellectually impart the experience to you.
How long were you there taking these courses?
Well, I took the courses once every 3 or 4 months, and I did it for a couple of years.
Wow.
Because what it did was is it really gave me the ability to recognize that this physical plane is not the final place.
Okay, now if this is a holographic existence, why are we doing certain things that if this was holographic we wouldn't have to do? For example,
Well, no, wait a minute. Wait a
Right,
minute. I need to explain the holographic aspect of it because
Okay.
it's the cause and effects relationship over 7,000 years in this particular. Now, remember, I'm running a precise timeline that begins about 7,000 years ago,
Okay.
and I related to this mother that I have in this lifetime in the closest way.
Mm-hmm.
But I had two fathers. I had a biological father, and I had two stepfathers. And one of the stepfathers was the man who took over the kingdom that I had back at the beginning of this relationship.
Now
so
you're.
all these,
Wait a
these
sec. Hold on
people
here. Hold on here.
I related
hello.
to over
Hello.
7,000 years.
Hello. You're kind of mixing me up here because I don't know when you're talking about in the time of Nero or when you're talking about present time. So when we go back and forth to periods, could you let us know?
Well, okay. All right. Now remember this. This lifetime was a between life agreement that I was going to rectify execution order that I gave on this woman who was
we
my
got.
mother in this lifetime.
That we got already.
And who was my daughter about 7,000 years ago.
Okay.
And so this timeline has been running for 7,000 years. At this point in time where I am now, it was a 7,000 year separation. In other words, I went through a whole series of lifetimes between that, and we were meeting up. There's 5 people in this lifetime that I'm meeting every time, or more or less every time. Because when you run a timeline, that timeline has a very precise beginning and a very specific end. But that's not the only timeline you run. I can tell you that when I was about 3 years old, I was laying in bed and I saw this man climbing into a spaceship. And at that moment, I knew that I did not have to accept this life. I could have entered that body and I had no idea what that life would have been like. But I chose to remain in this body and run this lifetime timeline.
Why?
But I had another opportunity at the age of 3 to drop this lifetime and enter that lifetime.
At the age of 3.
At the age of 3. But that man that I was going to enter was an adult.
And you couldn't.
But I chose to remain here. So I made that decision. But I'm not trying to tell you that I made it like we're talking right now. It's just something that just happened. But I know that at some inner space, in some inner space of my being, I chose to stay here rather than enter that other body.
All right, I have to take a commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour, so please stand by. And Exo Nation, are you a skeptic or are you a believer? Send me your emails, exxon@exxonradiotv.com. And I will be back on the other side as we continue our talk with Tito Abao. Interesting concept. Many questions to ask. Hopefully we'll get some answers. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Don't know why I said the things I said. Pride's like a knife, it can cut deep inside. Words are like weapons, they wound sometimes. I didn't really mean to hurt you. I didn't want to see you go. I know I made you cry, but baby, if I could turn back time. Hey lady, you lady, cursing at your life. You're a discontented mother and a regimented wife. I've no doubt you dream about the things you'll never do, but I wish someone had to talk to me like I want to talk to you. Ooh, I've been to Georgia and California and anywhere I could run. Took the hand of a preacher man and we made love in the sun. But I ran out of places and friendly faces because I had to
Welcome back, everyone. Tito, why do we have to run these timelines?
Well, the best I could figure out is that the universe has two aspects to it.
Mm-hmm.
One is consciousness, and the other is formlessness. And all I can tell you is that the paradox is that you want to have an experience. In the formless state, there's bliss and there's all this stuff like that, and you're happy and everything is beautiful, but there's no experience. So when you cross over out of the space that I call the emptiness,
Mm-hmm.
where you have no form, you have no desires,
Right.
you're just in this field.
Okay.
Then you cross over into this field of consciousness. And in the field of consciousness, once you enter it, you enter a duality. In other words, there becomes a positive and a negative pole.
Mm-hmm.
There becomes male, there becomes female. And then that dynamic creates all of these interactions. And I'll tell you exactly the trigger. The woman that it was my mother in this lifetime was my daughter 7,000 years ago. And in order to save my kingdom, I had to tie her to a rock and let this enemy that was attacking her capture her.
Okay, let me ask you something. Have you done historical research into the life of Nero, and has your experience matched up with historical records?
Well, as I began, when I first realized that, then I began to look at it, and I began to see the relationships. But I mean, that's a very complex thing. But what I can tell you is that there's something that's happened recently in this time period.
Okay.
That's very peculiar.
What's that?
Back in I think we were in the Civil War, but it's the karmic readjustment of the Civil War. And the key, when I first realized it, and I didn't realize it until after the My Pillow guy came into the scene. You know who the My Pillow guy is?
Sure, Mike Lindell.
Okay. So back in 1868,
Mm-hmm.
a Nathan Forrest attacked a fort called Fort Pillow. And this is the most amazing thing. And what happened was the fort had about 60% black troops and maybe 30% white officers and the troops. And the rebels hated black so much, they massacred everybody. They surrendered the Fort Pillow, and they massacred everybody, including all the blacks and all the whites. And that action that Nathan Forrest started, really got the Union upset, and it cut off a connection that they had going. They were exchanging prisoners and things like that, just as a humanitarian type thing.
Right.
But all of that ended when Fort Pillow happened. So in this lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
we have a guy who's My Pillow. Now this is, I can't, all I can tell you is that when you understand, because the Fort Pillow never got resolved. It was always a sore point. And Nathan Forrest was hated by the Union,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have liked to have done some after-war things as atrocities, but they
Right.
never got around to it. But doesn't it seem kind of weird that we have a guy by the name who's running My Pillow in this lifetime that's doing something quite similar?
Well, what's he doing?
And I don't know, should I tell you who Nathan Forrest is in this lifetime? Or is that
Yeah,
something
sure.
you
Yeah,
wanna go
sure.
with?
Yeah, sure.
The name of the senator, Senator Hawley,
Okay.
Missouri senator,
All right.
who was, now I'm going to say some things that are part of the record. I mean, it's part of the natural record. They believe that he was part of the incitement of the insurrection. Now, when you go into this world that I'm
Okay,
in,
hold on here. What insurrection?
okay, you don't believe there was an insurrection.
I don't know what insurrection you're talking about.
The one that happened on January 6th.
This is Canada.
Well, I'm telling you about of the United States.
Okay.
I don't know if you know. See, that's what I don't know for sure. That you.
Oh,
you
sure.
know
Yeah.
all these historic these
Yes,
things.
yes,
'Cause this
yes,
just
yes,
happened
yes, yes,
recently.
yeah. Well, we saw what happened the storming of Congress, right? Or the
Right.
Yeah. Okay, we saw
And
that.
that is connected karmically
Mhm.
to the Fort Pillow massacre.
Okay. How?
And well, this is something that of all the years of my studying this stuff, that I understand these relationships. Now that's why I'm trying to explain that unless you have are a student of this, it's kind of. But can you see the relationship between Fort Pillow and My Pillow?
No, I can't.
Okay. All right. If you can't see that, then
Well, you're
I
talking
can't.
about Mike Lindell, and you're talking about My Pillow, Fort Pillow. What does Mike Lindell have to do with Fort Pillow?
Well, the karmic relationship is being replayed in this time frame. In other words, what happened in 1868 at Fort Pillow
Right.
is being repeated this time, but it's an entirely different relationship because of the karmic shifting of the various karmic issues involved, the cause and effect relationships.
All right. I can follow you up to that point, but where does Mike Lindell fit in?
No, I'm not saying that, but I think that he has some kind of connection to it, but it's not him, it's the My Pillow connection. So
Is that
he was there.
is that a connection or just a coincidence?
Well, this is the problem that you have as a student of this particular stuff. From my point of view, I've had experiences that I understand these relationships.
But are they true relationships, or is that something?
That's the paradox. That's the paradox that you're dealing with.
I'm not dealing with it.
If you don't solve this paradox as a personal entity, well, then you go through this cause and effect relationship until you do.
Could it be that these paradoxes and these timelines and this hypothesis that you believe in is just another way to kind of escape the reality of everyday living?
Well, I'm not saying that isn't true.
Yeah.
But remember, I'm the one running this particular holographic engine. And I'm sharing my experiences and my understanding. Now, there's no possible way that I can prove any of this. But anyone out there who would like to take a look at it should get regressed first to find out, did you ever have a previous life?
But we know for a fact that past life regression is not reliable. It's been proven time and time and time again that past life regression is a form of hypnosis, and the results can be skewed just by the person who is conducting the session. We know this for a fact, so how can we take anything?
Well, I mean, you're saying you know it for a fact.
Yeah.
And my experience shows me something else. But then remember, this is my experience.
Right.
I cannot impart to you the spiritual aspects of my experience. All I can explain is this is what happened to me, and if there's something out there of the millions of people that are listening to this, that they have something that triggers in them to get them to take a look at it, then that's helpful. But as I said, there's no beginning, there's no end.
Right.
You either solve it or you don't solve it.
Okay, stand by. We've got to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, this is Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada. So to all our Canadian listeners, wherever you are on this great big world of ours, a very happy Thanksgiving. Don't forget to call up your mom, your dad, your children, your those who are important to you, to let them know that not only are you thankful for everything on your plate, but you're also thankful that they're in your life and that they are important to you. And it's all these different people who make you who you are. So give them thanks. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. Agoy.
You lady cursing at your life. You're a discontented mother and a regimented wife. I've no doubt you dream about the things you'll never do, but I wish someone.
Nobody can tell you there's only one song worth singing. They may try and sell you, 'cause it hangs them up to see someone like you. But you've gotta make your own kind of music, sing your own special song, make your own kind of music, even if nobody else sings along. You're gonna be nowhere, the loneliest kind of lonely. It may be rough going just to do your thing, the hardest thing to do. But you gotta make your own kind of music.
And welcome back, everyone. Tito, when we were talking about the holographic existence, does this holographic existence run the entire 7,000-year gambit?
Okay, well, it's all one consciousness. As I told you, there's this conscious formation,
Okay.
which is just consciousness that has, when you enter it, you enter into a dual universe where there's cause and effect,
Okay.
and it's running these timelines.
So,
but
so where do we
The
start?
trapdoor.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Where do we start
ahead.
from? Where are we born? Or are we born?
Well, that's what the paradox is that there's no beginning and there's no end.
so
There's consciousness, and there's nothing.
So
And
where
it's
do we
out
come
of this
from?
nothing that a little. The only way I can say is you have a kind of a conscious need for experience.
Oh, okay. I
But
understand
There's no, pardon?
that. I understand that, but where do we come from?
Well, the only thing that I know about it is that you come out of the nothingness, out of the formless state. In the formless state, there's nothing going on there, and it's prior to consciousness. So it has there's no storylines in the nothingness. But at some point, there's a little trigger point where you decide that you want to have a conscious experience.
Let me ask you,
It's very difficult to explain.
in your way of looking at life, is there a God?
If you enter the dual universe, there's a God.
Okay, but how
Because
about
that's the whole point of the dual universe.
all right? But when we're talking about the 7,000-year timeline, is God through with whoever?
That whole thing is the dual universe. Once you enter a timeline, there's what I call duality. In other words, there's a good and a bad. There's a God and there's a devil.
Yeah.
But before the timeline, prior to consciousness, is nothing.
Okay,
And
so
it has no desires. It's just the potential.
all right, so we spring out of nothing. We live these timelines, which are holographic. What for? What's the purpose?
Well, in some of the Hindu conceptual answers to that is just because.
That makes no sense.
I know,
Just
because it
because.
doesn't make any sense. And that's the whole point of it. There's no beginning and there's no end.
You know what? I'm going to tell you something. I like my life better
Right, because you have a duality, right?
because I know I'm real.
Right.
I know what I've done in the past, and I'm very happy with this one life.
Well, that's great.
So what's
I'm not trying to tell you that you need to follow this path.
right?
I'm just telling you my story.
Why do you follow
Because
that
I cannot prove any aspect of this.
So why do you follow that path?
Because I've experienced it. If I hadn't have experienced it, it would only be a kind of something that I'm making up.
But how do we
But
know
I
you?
actually had the experience of leaving my physical body, knowing that I was dying,
Right. That I got.
and
That
then a voice asked me not to die.
you see, that can be proven with medical records. Right. But the fact. Wait a sec. Hold on here. Wait a second.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You're trying to tell us that you are Nero, and a lot of people that have been regressed claim that they're people of great stature in the past.
And they probably were.
Oh, come on. How can you have 3 or 4
Well,
different people claiming
the
they're
thing
Jesus
I
Christ,
keep
for
trying to
example?
point out is these timelines or the conscious field has no beginning and no end, and all there is duality in the conscious field. Look, I cannot prove this to you.
I understand that.
I can't even give you a viable intellectual discussion of it, except as my ability to see it and explain it to someone outside myself.
So let me
I'm
ask
trying
you.
to do the best I can with what I experienced.
So why did you write your book?
Well, it was all of this was all part of the unfolding. Because as you write these stories that unfold your life,
Right.
you drop the karma of it. Because the cause and effect is driving your life through the timeline. But this is only one timeline of, well, I think there's a finite number of timelines, but it's so massive that there's no way to really put a number on it.
So who's in charge of all these timelines?
Well, the only way I can tell you about that part of it is that you just are.
Are what?
Well, that's the paradox.
But that's not an answer.
I can't. There's no way to, because prior to consciousness, there's nothing.
How do we know?
Well, that's what I discovered.
That's the paradox, right?
Right. But it's something you have to experience. If you don't, you run your timeline, and I'm just here telling you my story. That's the way I experienced it, and that's the way. I mean, otherwise, I would have to create something that would satisfy your intellectual needs, which wouldn't be the truth. I'm trying to tell you as much of the truth as I am capable of doing it.
Or as you believe it to be true.
Well, yeah, it's all a matter of belief, and that's the thing that runs the conscious field, belief.
So
You believe you have an identity,
Mm-hmm.
and as soon as you have that belief, you're in the conscious field.
Well, you see, I know I have an identity. I don't believe it. I know who I am. I know where I came from. I know what I've done. So I know who I am. So what does that make me in this?
It doesn't. I can't address that because I'm telling you my story
I see.
as
But
I experienced it, and
let me ask you this: have you come
I
across?
know that the writing of
Mm-hmm.
the story of that particular story
Right.
had a karmic reduction. In other words, I got more peaceful. I got, oh, this is what this was all about, and the guilt and the pain of that experience, because none of those things were easy. The decisions you make are based on what you believe in the lifetime or in the moment that you, and a lot of times it's going to not be a good thing
But is this?
in
Could
terms
this
of
just
cause
be?
and effect.
Could this just be a way to justify in your own mind in this real world what has happened in a situation that you've actually lived in this very world, in this very existence, that it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with anything that happened 7,000 years ago?
Well, the thing that you will experience if you ever are able to walk this kind of a path is that the energetic formations fall away. And that's how you know that you've accomplished something. You've unwound something. Because when you go into the cause and effect universe, you almost certainly are going to hurt somebody. And that when that harm goes out there, it comes back to you over time.
Hey, Tito, I hate to do this, but we're out of time for tonight, and I want to thank you for joining us. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I really don't. I don't even know why you wrote a book. 7,000 years ago, and you made no bloody sense at all. I'm baffled. I truly am baffled. You said the word paradox in this interview more than you said anything else. Mind you, that's only in my little holographic world, I guess. I'll be back next week, X-Zone Nation, as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone, a place where people dare to believe, oh boy, and dare to be heard. From everyone here at the X-Zone Broadcast Network to everyone out there, to all our Canadian listeners and fans around the world, happy Thanksgiving.